This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Friday, May 2nd, 2025, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will be joined by Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net for our closing markets. But first, it is a conversation with Andy Peterson as he is joined by Brent Swart, the president of the Iowa Soybean Association, here on Ag Matters PM.
Here with Brent Swart, president of the Iowa Soybean Association. Get a planting update from northwestern Iowa. You're smiling, Brent. So that on the 1st of May here on May Day, that must be a good sign, huh?
It is, yeah. Progress is good. We've had a really nice start to the planting season here. Obviously, it's hard to realize that April flew by that fast, but a lot of planting progress happened in the month of April, and we're really excited for what our potential could look like from a yield perspective, because we've really been planting into some really nice soil conditions. Probably, as we look back over the last 4 months, we had a really dry winter, not a lot of snow, which doesn't break my heart necessarily having to move snow all winter, but it was a bit of a concern coming into spring that we were in a pretty dry cycle. And obviously many climatologists have been talking about that Gleesberg cycle for 2025 and that 89-year drought cycle. So obviously a lot of story left to be told there, but if you're going to have a dry part of the season, I'd rather be during planting season. And we've had some intermittent small rains around here, but for the most part, planting progress has been very good.
Yeah, no question about that. And to your point about into good conditions, last couple of years, the early window is presented, and then it has taken maybe a month to get back to those kind of conditions. This year, we were fortunate to miss some things earlier in the week that were predicted. And boy, it's about as good as it gets here, and slowing things down a little bit with some moisture today, which always helps. But not a whole lot to complain about and or worry about, I guess, other than some equipment issues.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Probably at least here in Northwest Iowa, emergence will probably be just a little bit slower. But we're still in it. We were, just got out of April here. So probably if anything we could complain about is that it was a little on the colder side from a soil temperature perspective, but we just really didn't stay consistently warm. We've been warm and then we've gone back to cold a little bit, but that'll yet to be determined on how much that affects probably more so the corn, but a lot of soybeans have been planted in April. We're really excited about the percentage accomplished there, and we're again excited about, I think, the potential of the crop, especially as we talk about comparing it to last year, as we often do. That again, we've planted in that early window, and the early window stayed open a lot longer than it did last year. Here in Northwest Iowa, we ended up planting some in that early window, and then we ended up mudding in the rest in around Memorial Day, and that was a recipe for disaster. Of course, what happened afterwards with some of the flooding was the final stake in the coffin. But again, heading into a growing season for 2025, we're very excited about the conditions we put it into and the potential we have in our crop.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So what are you trying anything different this year on Swart Farms? What's your approach here in the 25 growing season?
Yeah, it's always fun to experiment and try some new things. Obviously, we're going to be trying some foliar feeds later on in the growing season, some protective stuff. We've played around with some biologicals as well. Here in the early part of the season, some residue management, some of those residue managing biologicals. So yeah, there's lots going on. We will probably also continue to participate in the nitrogen, the refresh of the nitrogen rates, and the study that's going on there with the nitrogen initiative through ISA and the Research Center for Farming Innovation. And so we're excited about contributing some data to that and continuing to learn on our own farm as well.
So, and we participate as well. I just actually planted that Sunday, I believe it was. I got to get that little flash drive here off to Alex Schaefer to put into the system. But explain a little bit about, especially from a soy perspective, why nitrogen rates matter.
Well, the Research Center for Farming Innovation, it's really it's a system, right? And your farming operation is a system. And so obviously our goal is productivity, profitability, and sustainability. And guess what? That companion crop, corn, it contributes to profitability as well. And so we want to manage costs for your farm and help you learn and become a more efficient with costs. But also, as we look towards the future and we talk to politicians and we look at water quality, which is very important and something we work on a lot here at ISA. Obviously, we have one of the state's only water testing labs. We want to make sure that we're efficiently using our nitrogen and we're keeping it on our fields and it's not running off or leaching into the public water system and the rivers and streams that flow downstream. So, it's a cost thing, it's an environmental thing, and the more we can contribute and be a part of that solution, the better off we're all going to be.
Yeah, being better neighbors always seems to matter.
Yep.
So
by the way, when you talk about nitrogen and we get really into agronomics, as we talk, I know Andy, you and I have talked in the past about some high yield practices for soybeans. We do start to enter nitrogen back into the picture because nodulation of the soybean and mineralization in the soil may not be contributing all the nitrogen that maybe 100 bushel soybeans would need. So we continue to scratch that itch a little bit too and look for continual production practices for high yield soybeans.
Yeah, allowing that plant to utilize its energy to reproduce, right?
Yeah.
Rather than nodulate nitrogen. Yep, absolutely the case. Let's talk market prices a little bit, Brent. How concerned, I guess, are you? And markets move. Trying to predict where it'll be a year in advance is something that'll give a person headaches and nightmares, right? If you let it. But with that said, certainly there's an advantage right now economically to plant corn. So
yeah,
with everything else going on, crystal ball question maybe a little bit, but how do you kind of approach things in maintaining your soy acres?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andy. And I think, I made mention to this in a couple past interviews. As we look at that corn to soybean ratio and that price ratio, it's favored corn here as we came through the winter months and we got going into planting. And so we truly see a decline in the soybean acres. Probably, again, in my neighborhood, in my neck of the woods, is probably the largest switch towards corn acres that I've probably seen in my 20-year career. So that's something to take note of because a lot of time it gets talked about, but we may not necessarily see it. And so we're very confident, I think, in what the USDA kind of projected. Obviously, in the state of Iowa, that might not be as large of a percentage shift, but there is still some corn on corn acres going in. And the other thing that contributes to that, not only the corn to soybean price ratio, but when we have a nice open spring like we've had in early planting progress,
right.
Guys will just keep planting corn and they'll keep going into good conditions. And so I've seen in the past where that really good planting conditions have also contributed to some more corn on corn acres. So, I think again that the USDA numbers are pretty accurate. In fact, they might even be a little light. But so then as we talk about, soybean prices, we've had a little rebound, run up a little bit here in the past few weeks, where prices have been a little stronger, and that's always good to see. It's always hard to tell how much the market has factored in and how much they have not factored in. But conventional thinking is that if we have a lot stronger amount of corn acres, that the soybean price should be showing us some more favorable attributes here later in the growing season, when the market really realizes, oh, by the way, there's not as many beans out there as we thought. So I think there might be some later season strength and continued strength in the soybean market, and I'm optimistic for that.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else that comes to mind here on the planning update, Brent?
No, again, we're thankful that again, for the most part, the state of Iowa has been doing really well as far as planning progress. The numbers I've seen, obviously here in Northwest Iowa, we're well ahead of both last year and the 5-year average. I know Northeast Iowa's probably struggled a little bit more with some more moisture and some more weather challenges. But I know the last few trips I've made down to Ankeny to the ISA office, planning progress was extremely good along that Highway 20 corridor and on south into the metro area. And so I'm really happy that the state of Iowa is off to a really good start for the 2025 growing season.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Always good to visit.
Thanks, Andy. Take care, man.
Thank you to Brent Swart, president of the Iowa Soybean Association, for joining today's show. Up next, we will have our closing markets with Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net. But first, a word from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
You're watching Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm joined now by Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net. Curt, here on Friday, what did we see in the trade in the grains?
Well, we had some green on the screen. Usually Fridays aren't very good when I'm on, at least. But July corn was down about 3 1/4. D's corn up 3 cents on the day. Spread unwinding. They sold the old crop, bought the new, narrowing that spread in a little bit. Beans finished up 6 to 8 cents. That wheat market up 12. On the weekly chart, everything was a little bit lower on the weekly scale, but we'll take today's price action. Earlier in the week, we had a price reversal to the upside, made a new low, closed a little higher. So this week's lows are going to be considered support. So we come in here next week, need to make sure we maintain the price gains we saw here going home Friday, Mark.
So, Curt, when it comes to the news this week, do we believe those rumors about potential trade deals being worked out? Do we think that's influencing the markets at all?
Oh boy, anything's game. Risk on any type of news item, whether it's true or not. I think there might be a little bit to it. It seems like both sides are kind of caving on certain products or items. So maybe there's a ray of hope, but outright kneel down and give up's probably not going to happen. Probably Friday, the Dow being up over 600, better employment numbers. Added a little bit more fuel to the fire here as far as giving the market some support, consumer confidence. Then when we're talking about China, there's talk that the Chinese wheat growing regions has a forecast it's going to be dry for another 2 weeks. So a lot of little dinky things came in and helped support the market. The main thing is consumer confidence, and your 401k looks a little bit better here Friday, at least, Mark.
Let's go over to the other side of the ag marketplace now, the livestock complex. How did the cattle and hogs trade today?
Oh boy, the cattle complex just continues to defy gravity. It was up anywhere from 145 to 225 on the weekly chart, up about the same amount, about 260, 280. Had some new higher moves here, particularly on the weekly chart. So strong gains. And I think part of that is we continue to see tight numbers. We continue to see a strong cash market. If you're out trying to buy feeders or even selling some fats, big decisions to be made. Hogs kind of a mixed bag, anywhere from $1.50 higher to $80 lower. We had the weekly chart just a little bit lower. Spread activity between the two when you look at the big picture between the beef and the pork side of the equation. Once again, if that stock market higher, that gives a little bit of consumer confidence to spend a little bit of money. Then two, believe it or not, Memorial Day is just around the corner. So we're starting to see the whole supply chain there start to gear up for some Memorial Day featuring. A lot of it's going to depend on weather. This weather looks a lot more favorable as we move into next week. And even next week's planning progress report's probably going to show some pretty good gains. A lot of mixed opinions on planning progress in the West, getting pretty well wrapped up in the East. Southeast, still a little struggling there. But this warm weather, we'll see these grills come out of the garage.
And I know there's some farmers out there that will certainly be ready for that warmer weather and a chance to get in the fields and get to work. I know, for example, we talked with your coworker, Matt Bennett, this morning. He hasn't been able to turn a wheel since Monday, he said. So I'm sure he's looking forward to a change in the forecast. He's in Illinois, where you are located, Curt. Curt, thanks so much for the time. What's the best way for our viewers to get in touch for more marketing information?
1-800-779-1515. Or go to agmarket.net and click on Intel. That's where the ag market team puts most of their information there.
Curt, thanks so much for the time. Always appreciate it, and have a great weekend.
You bet. Take care. Catch you next week.
Thank you to Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net for our closing markets here today. Let's take a look at the numbers and how the markets closed. You can find that information under the markets tab of our website anytime at iowaagnet.com.
July corn closes down 3 1/4 at $4.69 even. July soybeans up 7 3/4 at $10.58 even. July soybean meal up 2 3/4 at $2.96.90. July soybean oil down 27 cents at $49.43. Chicago wheat up 12 cents at $5.43 even. Minneapolis wheat up 2.5 cents at $6.16.5. Kansas City hard red wheat up 12.5 at $5.28.5. July oats down 3 3/4 at $3.38 even. On the Merc, June live cattle up $1.45 at $2.11.10. May feeder cattle up $1.72 at $2.94.95. May lean hogs up 55 cents at $92.95. May pork cutout unchanged at $100.90. Class 3 milk up 10 cents at $18.50.
That wraps up closing markets for today and brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media at Facebook, X, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And you can listen to our morning, midday, and closing market podcast, as well as our daily episodes of our Iowa Ag Matters podcast, wherever you find your favorite podcasts, at Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. For Riley Smith, Andy Peterson, and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.